Okay, good morning. We are doing week number 4 of legal research. We're going to skip over chapters 5 and 6. Those chapters deal with secondary sources. And to summarize that whole, both those chapters, don't use secondary sources. That's it. Secondary sources are things other than cases. They are encyclopedias or treatises, which are books that are written summarizing case law. And so, why use what somebody else says about a case? Why not just use that case itself? Now, having said that, sometimes secondary sources are really helpful in giving you background information so that you can understand a topic and begin your research. So there are encyclopedias out there. So if I have to do a dog bite case and I don't know anything about dog bites, nothing. I am clueless. I fell asleep in tort class. I don't understand anything about it. I can go to an encyclopedia and look it up. And then once I look up dog bite, it'll give me background. Now, there are encyclopedias for the entire country, and then there are encyclopedias for each individual state. They all have the word jurisprudence in them. So if I want to look up Ohio law on dog bites, I'm not going to cite it in a motion. I'm not going to do anything except try and get some background so that I can begin my research. So I have a kind of a launching pad for my research. Well, then I'm going to go to Ohio jurisprudence. That is the encyclopedia for Ohio. Okay? If I'm in Pennsylvania, it's Pennsylvania jurisprudence. Okay? Usually each state will shorten that name. So in Ohio, we call it OJUR. Ohio jurisprudence, OJUR. Okay? And again, we're never, ever, ever going to go to a judge and say, OJUR says, because the judge is going to laugh at me. Okay? It's not controlling authority. It is not something that came directly from a judge's or a panel of judges' pen. You can really only rely upon, when you're arguing a point, primary authority. Secondary authorities are really nice for giving you ideas for arguments or for giving you background. Okay? So chapters 5 and 6 really are about secondary authorities that you're never going to use. Now that I've poo-pooed secondary authorities, chapter 7 talks about miscellaneous secondary authorities, and actually some of these are really useful. Okay? So we're going to focus on chapter 7 this week. Now, if you look at the beginning of chapter 7, where it gives you the outline of what is going to be discussed in the chapter, it has attorneys' general opinions, legal dictionaries and thesauri, directories, form books, blah, 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 jury instructions, blah, 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 citation form. Okay? We're going to cover some of these. Again, you probably are not going to use legal dictionaries or thesaurus. If you don't know what a word is, you're going to Google it. Let's be honest. Okay? You're not going to use uniform laws, because all uniform laws are a bunch of people who get together and say, this is what the law should be all the way across the country. That's not the way it works. Okay? And so we're going to focus on attorney general's opinions, directories, form books, jury instructions. And then we're going to focus just a smidge on citation form, because the next chapter, which we're going to spend a couple of weeks on, is on citation form. Okay? So let's start with attorneys general opinions. First of all, what is an attorney general? What's an attorney general? Well, that is the chief law enforcement person for the state and for the country. We have a U.S. Attorney General, And one of your questions this week is, who is your U.S. Attorney General? Don't worry, I'm going to ask you about the state one also. So look in your discussion section this week, and that's your question that I'm going to have you discuss. Okay? But each state has one also. And these are the people who interpret law, give advice to the governor and the legislature, and then they also prosecute some kinds of crimes and handle some areas of civil litigation. There are different sections or divisions to an attorney general's office. Okay, and when we're talking about those divisions, those are the areas that the attorney general focuses on in that particular state. Okay, one division of the Attorney General's office is the legal opinions section or division. And what do? Well, the lawyers that work underneath the Attorney General hires a bunch of lawyers, okay, and paralegals, by the way. And the Attorney General, when questions are sent to the Attorney General from members of the legislature, from attorneys in the state, from the governor, the Attorney General will assign that division the responsibility to research and answer and come up with an opinion that will be adopted by that particular Attorney General. Now, it doesn't have the force of law, right? It's not like I can go to a judge and say, hey, you know what, this Attorney General over here in Ohio says, and the judge is going to say, that's just an elected lawyer. What do I care? But as far as the legislature is concerned, or the governor is concerned, if the Attorney General gives an opinion saying that this particular law is constitutional or not constitutional, or presents this issue or another issue, they will take that information and then either rely upon it or not rely upon it, or make changes to a law that they're drafting. It is just kind of a checkpoint in the system, so that if I'm a legislator and I'm drafting a law and I'm not really sure that what I'm doing is constitutional or not, I can ask the Attorney General. The Attorney General can give me a thumbs up or thumbs down, and then at that point I can either modify what I'm writing, or I can say, I think that Attorney General is wrong, or whatever. It gives me a touch point so that I can move forward. Okay? Now, why do we care about Attorney General's opinions? Well, because sometimes lawyers are crafting lawsuits saying that a particular law is unconstitutional. And maybe the Attorney General said that the law was unconstitutional, or saying that the legislature is entitled to do this but not that. Well, maybe there's an Attorney General opinion out there that agrees with me. And even though I'm really not going to go to the court and say, hey, there's an Attorney General opinion out there that agrees with me, what I can do is read the opinion and then borrow or lift some of the arguments that are being made in that Attorney General opinion. Okay? So they're useful kind of in the same way as we use the jurisprudence, the encyclopedias. They can give us background, but they go one step further in giving us direction on where the Attorney General sees the law going, and give us some arguments so that we can craft a more persuasive argument. So Attorney General opinions actually are helpful in that regard. Okay? The next section that I think is useful for you to know about are form books. Oh wait, I'm sorry. Directories. Directories are the next one. And I'm on page 250. There's a directory out there, and again, you're all too young to remember phone books. It's kind of a phone book expanded. And again, Are these really, really all that useful anymore? Maybe, maybe not. Because again, we can Google things about people whenever we want. But a directory is a compilation of lawyers, what states they practice in, what their specialty is or what they focus on, where they went to school. Why is this important? Well, if I am interviewing for a paralegal position at a specific law firm with a specific lawyer, or maybe I don't even know who the lawyer is, maybe I just know what the law firm is, I can go to a directory and get information, and that becomes helpful, right? Let's say that I'm interviewing with somebody who went to Ohio State. Okay, well, I went to Ohio State. Do you think I'm not going to bring that up in my interview? Of course I am. Of course I am. I'm going to use this information to connect with whoever it is I'm with. Okay? Similarly, if I have a case against somebody, I want to know everything I can know about that person. How old are they? Are they just out of law school? Or have they been practicing for 25 years? Well, that's going to make a difference because someone who's practiced for 25 years practices very differently than someone who's practiced for a year. Okay? I want to know what school they went to. I want to know if the case that I have against them is a specialty that they do all the time or if this is just something they're dabbling in. It gives me information so that I can help my client because I have the most information possible about that attorney. So directory is a really helpful way of looking at that. The most famous is Martindale-Hubbell, and you can read about that. Again, I'm not really sure how useful these things are to you anymore because I can just Google somebody and get a ton of information about them. Or I can go on the Martindale-Hubbell website and I can look up this stuff. Either way, it's important to know who you're interviewing with, who you're going against. Sometimes law firms merge. Find out who is in the other law firm. Do I really want to merge with these people? Do I have things in common? Do I have the same goals? Okay? It's a way of gathering information. So directories can be helpful. And while you can Google, it's usually better, honestly, to go on the Martindale-Hubbell website. Okay? Now, the next one we want to go through is form books, and I'm on page 252. So, form books, the best things ever invented. If I have to write a motion, if I have to draft interrogatories or a request for production of documents, do I have to reinvent the wheel every single time? No. There are people out there who work for publishing companies who put together form books, plug and chugs. Now, again, we live in a digital age. You can buy the software that has the equivalent. When I say book anymore, what I really mean is a digital product. Okay? So you can buy a digital product so that you can take a paragraph here and put it in if it applies to you. You can just use the structure and write your section that you need to write for your particular case. The nice thing is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't sit in front of a blank computer screen going, oh gosh, how do I even begin? Form books are great because they give you, at the minimum, a structure that you can fill in. Okay? Now, there are some well-known ones on page 53, American Jurisprudence Legal Forms. Okay? American Jurisprudence. Where have I heard that word jurisprudence before? Oh, yeah, encyclopedia. So the same companies that put together encyclopedias that give you background so that you can begin your research also put together form books. Now, if it says American in front of it, that means it's for the entire country. So they're not going to be specialized for your particular state. But if you're practicing in federal court, the American jurisprudence ones, or AmJur, are the ones you want to use. There's Bender's practice forms. Those are generally federal. There are tax analysis forms. If I'm a tax attorney, holy moly, those forms are going to change all the time, and there are a gazillion of them. So it's nice to have software that is regularly updated so that you can stay on top of that. Federal procedural forms. Am I filing the right motion in the right way at the right time? That's what these forms are for. Okay? And then at the very bottom, there's West's legal forms. You know what I'm going to say, right? I love West. I think West Publishing is brilliant. And West looked at all the other areas where they could make money and said, hey, lawyers need forms. And hey, we have a digital library. Maybe we could put this into a digital library with forms, and they will do their research and then use our forms. And that's what they did. So West's forms are my particular favorite. You can specialize them for the state that you're in. There are bankruptcy forms. There are federal forms. It's just a wonderful system. So those are the forms that I use that I think are the most useful. And if you look on page 255, you can see here's a sample form. Now this is from the state of Virginia, and it's for criminal procedure. But you can see there are blanks in there, but pretty much the whole thing is written, right? So if I need to get a psychiatric order, if I have a client that I think needs a psychiatric evaluation, I can pull up this form, fill in the blanks, 5 minutes instead of an hour. And time is money. I know that sounds trite, but really, if you can save 45 minutes, you've got to, because you got an hour's worth of work for that remaining 45 minutes that you have to do. Okay? Now, your book talks about where do you locate these form books. Truthfully, on West. That's the easiest place to do it. Or you can purchase those digital libraries. Okay? We're going to skip over to jury instructions, which are a very specific kind of form. So when we're talking about jury instructions, what do I mean? Well, let's review a little civil procedure, shall we? Or a criminal procedure, both. We have a jury trial. We go through the entire trial. How does the jury know what they're allowed to consider and what they're not allowed to consider? Because in our system, the jury is the trier of fact and the judge is a trier of law. Okay? So at the end of the trial, the judge looks at the jury and says, this is the law that you can consider. Now apply the facts to the law and see what you come up with. Okay? Well, where does the judge get that law from? Well, believe it or not, just not in their own little head. Each side, plaintiff, defendant, prosecutor, defense lawyer, will both present the judge with proposed jury instructions. Why are we going to fight about something like that? Because sometimes these are fights. Because maybe I interpret the law one way and my opposing counsel interprets it a different way. And so we're gonna fight. We're gonna tell the judge, no, this jury instruction should be this, and my opposing counsel is going to say, no, jury instruction should be this. By the way, it's more than one. Usually jury instructions are multiple pages with lots of instructions, okay? And most of the time, opposing counsel will agree on 99% of those jury instructions. That 1% could sway the jury one way or another. And so it's important that you understand what kind of jury instructions are out there. So your book on page 265 talks about jury instructions. Where do they come from? Well, usually every state has their own set of jury instructions that you can look through. And again, a lot of them are boilerplate. A lot of them are, what is reasonable doubt? Or what is a preponderance of evidence? Okay? those things are pretty straightforward. But if you're talking about a case where you have a novel area of law or there's a dispute in the law, you want the judge to instruct the jury on that twist, that perspective of law that helps your client the most. And that's where you fight. So jury instructions are essential if you're a litigator. The jury instructions form books are essential. They give you a starting point, they give you the boilerplate, and then you hone them for your particular case. Okay? If you look on page 268, there are sample jury instructions. I don't believe on your Westlaw we have that jury instructions. In the library, we do have we have jury instruction books. So if you get a minute, go into the library and you can pull those to take a look. They are more than useful. They are essential if you are a litigator. Another way you can kind of twist the use of jury instructions is, okay, let's say I have a dog bite case. Somebody comes in and I don't have a jurisprudence. I don't have an encyclopedia to start with. And I don't feel like doing a plain language search on Westlaw and reading 10,000 cases. I can go to the jury instructions and I can look up the law on dog bite cases. I can work backwards. Because remember, the judge is going to instruct the jury on the law. On the law about dog bite cases, right? Or there are a number of different topics within jury instructions books or the software. And so what you can do is you can work backwards. And you can look up dog bite in those jury instructions and you'll get the law, because that's what the judge is going to instruct the jury about. Okay? So you can work both ways. Either way is fine, just so long as you can get in and you can start your research. Okay? The last thing in this chapter that I want to go over is citation form. Now, the next chapter is going to be completely about citations. You're going to hate me, but this is what we have to do. Okay? So if you look on page 270, it gives you how to cite these secondary forms, these secondary authorities, if I were citing them. Now, I'm going to tell you, you're never going to cite them. Never. Except jury instructions. When we give proposed jury instructions to the judge to consider, we have to tell the judge where those jury instructions came from. And so the way you do that and the form that you use to tell the judge, hey, this is where I got this particular jury instruction from, is number 5 on page 270, where it says jury instructions. Okay? That's how you do it. Okay? Again, we're going to do citations, and you're going to hate them, in the next chapter for the next 2 weeks. At least. We may even do a third week. But just keep in mind that whenever we are telling the judge, hey, judge, we would like you to instruct the jury using this particular instruction, we have an obligation to tell the judge and opposing counsel where did that come from. The purpose of citations is to keep everybody honest, right? My opposing counsel has to be able to pull up and read whatever I put for a jury instruction. Why should they trust me? I'm trying to win, right? Why should they trust that I didn't omit a word or change a couple of words around? They need to keep me honest. And that's why you put a citation down. Okay? So that they can go to that citation, they can look up wherever I got that jury instruction from, and they can double check my work. Okay? Citations are important. And knowing how to cite for jury instructions is something you have to do if you work for a litigator. Okay? Now, the very end of the chapter gives you a bunch of, of secondary sources, all of the secondary sources that are in chapters 5, 6, and 7. You can look through them. Again, we are never, ever, ever going to cite these when we're doing anything with the court, but they can be research tools, and so that's something that you should know about. Okay? Now, I'm going to give you a few assignments from the end of chapter 7, so look in your module for that. And then we're going to focus on Attorney General opinions in our discussion for this week. So make sure you check your discussion and make sure you do your module. If you have any questions, of course, email me and let me know what's going on. Okay? Thanks so much.